Hello! We are getting started on doing a research project, and so we are going to use a research folder to help us keep track of all of our work and help us organize our thoughts to come up with a final draft report that is absolutely fantastic. Now, this method can be used to do research on any topic whatsoever. So it's a really good strategy to use this tool, and again, you can use it over and over and over again. The first thing I'm going to do is get my folder. Now, you can use really any kind of folder, but here we just have a regular run-of-the-mill manila folder. On the inside, I have a place here where I can staple in and attach any of my papers, especially once I start getting rough drafts and notes and things. I also have a sandwich baggie full of my note cards, and then this really clever system to help me organize things. As we go through the different lessons, I will use this as my example, and that way you can see how mine comes together. Now, the very first thing I need to do is write down my research topic. Now, for my example, I'm just going to do a little bit of research about Chinese immigration into Montana. So my topic, T equals Chinese in Montana. Now, I told you in a full sentence what I want to have my topic about, but here I can just put a very short version of it. This is just my working folder, so it does not have to have every single thing written out in a full sentence. Now, from here, you should probably also put your name on it. It's never a bad idea. And as I get started doing my research, the first thing I'm going to do is begin by filling out research cards. So just a quick review, anytime you are doing research, we are going to find multiple sources. Just one source isn't going to be a very good research project because then you're just repeating and making a summary of that one source. True research means that you are going to be looking far and wide for your information from many different sources so that you can put together your own collection of knowledge. Now, excuse me, for our projects, we generally try to find at least 10 research cards worth of information before we start trying to draft. We will keep them in our folder, and we are going to be putting our names on the back of each card because you never know if something's going to get dropped and then you lose it and you don't remember what it is. Now here, I have my basic description of what your card should look like. At the top, we're going to have the T equals for the name of your research topic. We will then use a star to label the key idea that this piece of information relates to. And then we will use our detail dashes and dots to fill out the actual piece of information that we're looking for there. So the first thing that I'm going to do on my card is I'm actually going to do my T equals, and again, I'm just doing a very short version. I want to research about Chinese immigration to Montana. That's a full sentence. I'm just going to call it Chinese in Montana for my simple T equals. Now, the next topic that I am going to be taking from, we're going to read just a little bit from Witness to History, the remarkable untold story of Virginia City and Nevada City, Montana, and how they came to be restored and saved for future generations, as told by one who was there for much of that important chapter. Fabulously long title. I love it. This was written by John D. Ellingson, a really lovely person, and he really was hugely instrumental in preserving those communities, and he actually just passed away recently. So I'm going to read a little bit of John's book, and then I'm going to fill out my note card. And I do want to talk a little bit about how you take somebody's words, summarize them, and write them down in your note card. So here's the section that I want to read here. The greatest number of the Chinese in Montana had been laborers working to build the Central Pacific Railroad from California eastward. When that monumental task was finally completed and the rails from east and west were joined in northern Utah in 1869, the Chinese laborers found themselves out of work. Many of them headed north to Virginia City. The Chinese community soon numbered as many as 500 souls. The Chinese were not only miners, they found work as cooks, woodcutters, waiters, and of course laundrymen. It was the identification of the Chinese with the latter occupation that made them targets of a discriminatory tax. Montana's second territorial legislature in 1867 enacted a tax of $10 per quarter, which was a substantial amount of money, on all males who now or may hereafter be engaged in the laundry business. The amount was later upped to $15 per quarter and then $20. The tax was eventually repealed. The Chinese managed, despite considerable prejudice, to thrive here, often diligently working claims abandoned by the first impatient wave of miners. They lived in a Chinatown in Virginia City and had their own shops, temples, and restaurants. Through their hard work and honesty, they eventually won a grudging respect from the non-Chinese inhabitants of Alder Gulch. So that is the section that relates most specifically to my research topic. And I can see here there is a great historic photograph that was included. And I now need to figure out what I'm going to write down on my card. Well, the most important thing here is we don't steal the words of other people. We're not going to plagiarize. I read that section after telling you where it came from and who originally wrote it. But when I put it on my card, I'm not going to be writing the whole thing. This is going to be my summary. Now, if I have to look at it and write it down, I am copying it down word for word. If I want to do that and I want to have a specific quotation, I need to include quotation marks around it. Now, if I am just trying to keep track of the information that I want to use, then I'm going to summarize it in my own words, and that way when I write it down, it will not be in quotation marks. I will still write down a source citation just so that I remember where that piece of information came from. So the first thing I'm going to do, I would reread that because I want to make sure that I really understand it first. And then I'm going to decide which part of that information is the part that I'm looking for on this card. It talked about a lot. Why Chinese laborers were first coming to the American West, how they ended up in Montana Territory, discrimination based on laundry. There was a lot going on in that short little section. That's only one paragraph, actually. But the part that I want to talk about, I'm just going to start first with, I think, the information on how many Chinese laborers came to the United States to work on railroads. So my topic there, I am going to just label my topic railroads, because I am almost guaranteed to be finding more information related to Chinese workers on the railroads in other sources. Now, I can always change my mind later and rename the topics here, but at least now I know my topic is Chinese in Montana. My main key idea, the topic that I am narrowing down to, is going to be railroads. And specifically here, many of the Chinese laborers came to the American West to work on those railroads, but once the Intercontinental Railroad was completed in 1869, they needed other work. So I'm going to write down in my own words, after the Intercontinental Railroad was completed, many Chinese needed other work. Now, this is my one fact that is going on my one card. If I have other facts that I want to record from this source, I have to write them on other pieces of paper. The reason here is later we're going to physically arrange these and sort them and separate them, so you can't be putting too much all on one card. Now, the last part here, the most important thing, is later when I'm looking at all these cards from different sources, I might not remember where this one came from. So I'm going to write down a very simple source note to myself. So when I go back and I go, oh man, which book did I find that in? Oh, that was in John Ellingson's book, wasn't it? So I'm just going to write that this was from Ellingson. Now, this is not a total, complete, beautiful, finished source citation like I would see in a professional source. However, it is going to remind me, oh yeah, that's from Ellingson's book. Okay, when I put together my final version and I put together my final list of all the sources that I referred to, that's when I'll find the full source citation for his source. So here I have one piece of information, and to make sure that I don't forget, and if I drop this on the floor or something like that, I'm just going to write Mrs. D on the back so that I remember. If somebody picks it up, they can say, oh, hey, I found your card. This then will go into my collection. And as I research, I will want to fill out at least 10 cards, 10 pieces of information. However, you can always record more. You don't have to use every single card that you write something on, but it's much better to have extra information than have too little information when you're writing. So, in order to complete my project here, I will continue doing more research. From just this source right here, I could probably fill out 3 or 4 cards. I can have many cards from the same source. But I'm probably going to want to have a minimum of 3 sources for anything that I research. If I'm doing really serious research, I will want way more than 3. But 3 is a good number to start with. Here I am using a book. I might also find information from other types of sources. One of my favorite ways to do research is to interview people. And so if there's somebody who I could interview on this topic, I might get great information from them that I wouldn't otherwise be able to locate. And then that can help me find, oh, haven't you seen this book? Oh, it's a great book, you should read it. That will help me locate other sources of information. So for any school project that we do, I usually recommend you need to find one print source. An interview source would be absolutely fantastic. You might also find a magazine article, a newspaper article. You might access those online, but you are not going to want more than one internet-based resource. We want to get used to researching beyond just what I find when I Google something. So that is the first part of our research phase, and I look forward to seeing what you've learned, and we can start organizing it in the next phase.